In today's video, I will talk about investing, finance, and motion pictures, perhaps the most popular three niches on YouTube. And I will also talk about YouTube in this video. So let's get into it. This is a story about David Booth, who went to graduate school because he wanted to get a PhD and become a professor. What he learned was how to make a fortune as an entirely new kind of investor. When David Booth was a student at the University of Chicago 50 years ago, his teachers were future Nobel Prize winners whose curious ideas about financial markets would transform the way people think about money. Their lectures were rough drafts of the papers that showed how ordinary investors who barely touched their boring portfolios could outperform professional managers and famed stock pickers after fees and expenses. This innovative and counterintuitive research on market efficiency would one day fuel the rise of passive investing. It would also change the life of David Booth. David Booth's decision to apply those intoxicating academic ideas was the beginning of a wildly successful investment firm called Dimensional Fund Advisors. And ever since, the billionaire has wanted to explain Zen-like investing the way he was taught it. How could he teach it to others? He thought that explaining probability theory and regressions would not really be able to reach too many people. So he financed a documentary from one of the world's most renowned filmmakers and put it on the world's most popular entertainment platform. The most renowned filmmaker that he came across who would make this documentary was Academy Award winning director Errol Morris, and the most popular entertainment platform on which he released this documentary for free is none other than YouTube. This documentary is titled Tune Out the Noise. It is a nerdy and genuinely engrossing documentary about investment strategy. It is an 88-minute long film about the science of markets, and it is available for viewing for free on YouTube. It has already racked up millions of views. Tune Out the Noise is the story of radical ideas that became powerful enough to move trillions of dollars, and the main characters are renegade investors and unlikely titans who created the revolutionary financial products that we have come to depend on. The material of the film is as rich as all the people interviewed in that film. The stars of his documentary include David Booth and Rex Sinkfield, who met at Chicago in the 1970s before they founded DFA. At the time, the notion that asset prices incorporated and reflected all available information might as well have been heresy. It would take decades for people to wrap their minds around the concepts that doing nothing was better than doing way too much, and that owning the market was usually smarter than trying to beat the market. But as they accepted the wisdom of buying and holding a diversified portfolio of assets rather than picking stocks themselves or paying investors to find winners for them, huge sums of money have migrated from active to passive management, far and away the biggest shift in the history of investing. In the war of philosophies, the passivists have won. In fact, passively managed American equity mutual funds and exchange traded funds have recently overtaken active funds and now control more than 10 trillion American dollars according to Morningstar Direct. But it has to be mentioned, DFA isn't strictly a passive or active investor. It is both. The company traces its roots back to the early 1980s, right after the invention of the low-cost index fund. DFA's founders believed that markets were mostly efficient and more efficient than most in finance believed. But they also believed that basic index funds were too mechanical and left too much money on the table. They decided they could do better by combining a respect for efficient markets with the latest, wonkiest financial theories and their own judgment. In the early days, they could not afford office space and worked out of a spare bedroom in Booth's apartment in Brooklyn, in New York. It was a few miles and an entire galaxy away from Wall Street. These days, DFA is one of America's largest fund managers and oversees nearly 800 billion American dollars of assets. And the University of Chicago's Business School is named for Booth after he donated hundreds of millions back to the place responsible for his wealth. Now, David Booth has made it a priority to spread the gospel of what he learned there. He feels that people would be happier if they had a deeper understanding of stock markets. They would let the market work for them instead of trying to outwork the market. They would keep calm in times of volatility and find comfort in the order beneath chaos. They would turn down the volume of financial discourse and tune out the noise. If only he could get them to listen. Of course, hiring Errol Morris to direct a movie about one's company is a bit like getting Van Morrison to sing at your company's holiday party. But when DFA approached the Academy Award winner 5 years ago to make a film about the birth of modern finance, he was intrigued. After all, he's made films about true crime, Jean Le Carre, and everything from US defense secretaries to pet cemeteries. And he knew from personal experience that finance could be thrilling. Errol Morris worked in the financial industry as a private detective before he became a filmmaker. What did he do exactly? He investigated various different alleged financial crimes. The way Errol Morris saw it, this job wasn't so different from that job. Morris said that the film was actually an investigation, a really compelling investigation into the nature of what makes sense for an individual investor. In fact, the approach made so much sense that Morris himself became a DFA investor. As it turns out, it's not even the first time that his work inspired an investment. Morris is a legend of the advertising business. He has directed 1,000 commercials, including a campaign for Apple in 2002 about converts who switched from PCs to Macs. Very famous ads. As a result, he put a very small amount of money into Apple stock and he has never touched it. Since then, Apple stock is up 500-fold. One takeaway from this documentary is recognizing the importance of chance and taking advantage of it. Almost everyone who played crucial roles in the evolution of investing happened to be in the right place at the right time only because of forces beyond any of their control. The only thing they could control was what they did with that random stroke of luck. Technically, the documentary is considered advertising by US Securities and Exchange Commission marketing rules, but you won't come away from it feeling like you've just watched a commercial. David Booth hopes people will see it, hear the once contrarian ideas that captivated him, and think, that makes complete sense. He said that the idea makes nearly complete sense. There is no amount of rational persuasion that could convince me never to speculate in the market again, but I have evidence to know better, and to know that if that's all I'm doing myself an enormous disservice. Not that he is tempted by meme stocks, crypto, sports betting, or typical means of speculation. Morris said he has a much, much worse and more dangerous habit. It is called filmmaking.